What is up, YouTube fam? Robbie C here. Today we are going to talk about off-season goals, benchmarks, things you should be aiming for so that as you are heading into the colder months where you may not be getting out and playing all of the time, especially with daylight saving shifts coming around where there may not be as much daylight as you're looking for. Don't worry, we got loads of solutions and hopefully building a beautiful checklist for you to look at to see where you should be moving at with your game. But before we dive in, have to ask the most important question. Wow, that was hard to say. How are you doing today, Artie? Are you having a good one?
So catch me if I fall.
Disc golf off season. This is something where we talk through, if you are following along with the Disc Golf Pro Tour, this week we have the United States Disc Golf Championship, USDGC, out in Rock Hill, South Carolina, North Carolina? I don't know, one of the Carolinas. And this event comes in as the second to last event of the technical Pro Tour season for 2023. And for a lot of pro players, they have been going on the grind, playing pretty much major tournaments every single weekend, starting in late February all the way through mid-October. Tour championships obviously happening next week, but that's only for the top 32 MPO players and top, I believe, 16 FPO players. So players will dive into the off season. What off season truly means for a lot of folks is that when we aren't necessarily going tournament to tournament every week, we have more time to work on and fix our game. And in order to do that, we usually have to make tweaks or adjustments. So for lots of players, they are not going to make major form changes or tweaks during the tournament season, because knowing that I have to compete around the corner or I have to throw shots at a high executable level, most times I'm gonna have to take like 1 or 2 steps back in order to make progress forward, and that comes at the cost of form change. Now, form change doesn't just have to be with a backhand or your throw or your drives or your forehands and whatnot. You can make form adjustments even in your putting. For instance, if I was trying to move from more of a push putter, which is that pendulum swinging motion, and I was finding inconsistency, let's say I was having like the Calvin Heimberg where I couldn't seem to dial in the distance on this latter part of the season, I wanted to switch to more of a spin putt and get that going for me. I could use the off season where I know that I don't necessarily have to be working on certain things or being ready for the tournament that's around the corner. Be a great time to work on that change in my game. There are a multitude of things that you can work on in the off season, and especially if you are a newer player or you've just started taking disc golf a little more seriously this year, finding what you should be working on first or what you should be working on next can be a sort of confusing understatement. It's like, do I put the chicken before the egg, or am I putting the omelet there? Like, what should I be working on? So I wanted to give you my list of what you should be doing, as well as some plateaus or benchmarks that you could be checking to say, hey, this is good right now, I can move on to the next piece. In a non-surprising fashion, I think that one of the first places that you should always start is with the basket. Start at the basket and work your way backwards. So if you are going to spend a lot of time trying to improve your game and you want to get there as fast as possible, starting on your putting stroke and finding a confident and repeatable putting stroke is going to be huge. Now, how far out should you be working on that putting stroke? I have done a video here on my channel about what it takes to shoot 900 rated golf. And 900 rated, for those of you not familiar with the rating systems, is someone who I would say is better than the average golfer. So not necessarily playing on the professional level by any means, but if you were to take them out against a bunch of casuals, they would probably do pretty well. Classic. Too high on that putt. So if you want to shoot 900 rated disc golf from the putting range, you should be making pretty much all of your putts 20 feet and in. So from this distance right here, we're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 6.5 total strides, which puts us to 20 feet. As you can see there, let's see, I putted 6 putters. Yeah, I putted 6 putters, made 5 of them. And I'm gonna work on that exact same distance going back here to the other side. Getting all of these putts dialed in to where, as you can see, I'm not even really thinking about this shot too much. I'm just throwing putt after putt after putt, keeping that 20-foot range dialed. Now, You're not going to be 100%. You want to try to make most of them, but we're humans. We make errors, especially those of you who are amateurs. Myself can be included in that nowadays. This distance I just made, okay, so we made 12 attempts and we made 10 out of 12. Both of our misses being too high, which I like that high miss any day of the week. I want to try to dial this in, but if you were thinking, oh, 20-foot putts, I already make that. That is most commonly when I ask people, what's your confidence range that you think right now you can make 85 to 90% of your putts? They go to this 20-foot range and they're like, oh yeah, I should make all these. But once you actually walk out that 20-foot range, it's farther than you think it is. For most people, I would start at that 10-foot range. So if we start 10 foot, let's see, 1, 2, 3, right here. You're thinking to yourself, wow, this is a gimme. I can, like, especially being a 6'3" guy, I can get very close to the basket. But those are the putts that if I'm missing those putts, I am kicking myself for so hard after the round. As opposed to these 20-footers, once I actually walk these out and I'm seeing these putts in reality, wow, it's not as easy as I thought it was. So I would always think about starting at that 10 to 15 foot range, getting these putts dialed in, and then as you gain confidence, you can take some steps back. There are other videos on my channel that I'm not gonna highlight now that give you some putting practices, such as one of my favorites, which is the 3-putt drill, where you're gonna have 3 putters. You're gonna throw 2 putts with your normal stance, and 1 putt with your uncommon stance. So if you're more of a stagger guy, make sure one of those is straddle. If you're more of a straddle, switch to a stagger. If you make all 3 of them, you get to move back. If you make 2 of them, you get to stay right here. If you make 1 or less, you have to take 1 step forward and putt from there. You do that drill for 15 to 20 minutes a day and you'll find that you work your way back, but I definitely think that you need to spend a lot more time focusing on this shorter range for starters. Until you get your putting to where you're at that 20-foot, 80 to 90% confidence range, I would say at least 60% of your time in the off season needs to be focused on that, especially because you can just spend that 20 to 30 minutes a day working on the putting stroke. After that, we're gonna talk upshots. Now, your upshot range is going to depend on what your maximum throwing range is, but we need to say that if my max distance throwing range is in the 300-foot spot, then I need to take 100 feet, we'll say 150 feet off of whatever my max distance is, my max controlled distance, and I need to get deadly accurate inside of that range. So the upshot drill that I'm gonna say you need to spend some time focusing on is you need to be able to, both ways, throwing backhands and forehands at a range. You need to take that 150-foot spot, right? 150 feet short of your range, and you need to set up an upshot drill. That upshot drill is you're going to take a basket, place it out in the field. You can put your bag there if you don't have a basket, things like that. Bag's probably gonna be way faster, and you are going to set up a 15-foot circle of cones all the way around your target. Once again, bag doesn't have to be a basket. But Mr. YouTube man, you just told me that I need to work on my 20-foot putts. Exactly. If you find yourself with 85 to 90% confidence from 20 feet, when you step up to that 15-foot range, the basket is gonna look like it is the size of a barn. Like you can hit it without, I mean, my eyes are closed. So you probably should putt with your eyes open. Setting up this 15-foot range, you want to try to practice within 50-foot increments of, let's say you are at 300 feet for your controlled max distance. You're then going to work on 150 feet, work on 150, work on 100 feet, and work on 50 feet. If I'm 50 feet away, can I, on a backhand and a forehand, get the disc to land within a 15-foot circle of the basket? Because if I can do that, then I have tap-ins where I am not thinking about the shot. And then I'm gonna back up to 100 feet and I'm gonna work on that. And when you get all of those distances dialed, you're not only going to get that shot dialed in, but you're also gonna get intimately familiar with your discs so that when you find yourself on the course, you can use those shots accordingly. So how long should you be practicing on upshots? Your upshot range truly is that whatever your distance is, chop 150 feet off of it. And that even means that, hey, let's say I'm throwing 250 feet max, then I need to consider upshots being 100 feet and in. If you're only throwing 150 feet, you may say, well, I don't really have any upshot range. And that is actually pretty accurate. There are definitely some things that we can be working on to get you some extra distance, but at 150 feet, pretty much everything's going to feel like a full power shot, and that's okay because it just takes time if that's where you're at in your game right now. So once you have your 20-foot putting range and once you are hitting, I would say 75% accuracy at least on that upshot drill, where at your max upshot range, you feel like you can consistently get 75% of the shots to land near that circle, mostly inside of it. Then you're gonna feel like you have your upshots dialed. And that is where we head off to hitting the big stick. What are realistic goals for you to look at in terms of adding distance to your game during the off season? I would say looking at a 20 to 30% increase is a big ask, especially because 20 to 30% can be huge if you're already throwing like 400 to 500 feet. I'll say my safe assumption is that if you want to add 50 feet of distance to your game during the off season, that is a completely understandable and doable goal. And depending on where your current max distance is, that number or how you're going to get there can drastically change. I've got a video titled How to Throw 300 plus feet consistently that goes over some common tropes and things that people are messing up if you don't find yourself able to clear the 300-foot marker on a regular basis. Most often, it's because your feet aren't being actually planted in sort of a engaged hip motion. Your feet are most often being planted out. You're throwing nose up in your shots, which is causing the disc to work against you rather than for you. And the third being that you are just separating your timing of the lower body and the upper body. So instead of really engaging that lower body half, you're probably just isolating the arm, which then leads to, once again, more of that push-pull mechanic rather than actually throwing the disc smoothly like you could. So with distance coming last, if you already have your putting at your 20 feet, you have your upshots at your 75% accuracy range from max distance upshot range, I would say then you're putting some time into throwing the disc. Like I said, there are a multitude of methods that you're going to use, but you want to try to add, we'll say, a safe 50 feet of distance to your drive, and let's let that be the start of I'm working on my drive. But what happens if we're only a month into the off season and I already accomplished all of that? Well, you probably guessed it. Instead of being confident from 20 feet, we're gonna start moving back and trying to get confident from 25 feet. Whoop. Whoop. I would say my confidence range is in like the 22 to 24 foot range. So even I am trying to get that confidence from 25 feet. You're gonna move back the putting again, and then you're gonna move back the upshots, and then you're gonna move back the driving. You can see that these principles all kind of build upon each other, because as I increase my putting range, I also have the potential to increase where my comfort putts are being made from, which enlarges my upshot target area because I feel more confident making those putts. And then my upshot range also increases because I've added 50 feet of distance to my drive. But I want to talk real fast about why we start in this order versus working backwards as a way to wrap up this video. If we start at the basket and work our way backwards, you just saw that the progression naturally builds upon itself. But let's say I go the opposite direction and I'm like, yo, give me the distance first, baby. Here's why you're gonna put a clip in that. I start on my distance and I get where I'm throwing an extra 100 feet first. That's when I wanna dial in. How many times on current courses that I'm playing, maybe this is an activity that you can even do yourself. There's, for some reason, a bee has decided to go nuts and like just follow me during this whole video. I want you to take the two courses that you play most commonly, all 18 holes. I want you to put a check mark next to every single one that you can currently reach with your max distance. Then I want you to say, if I added 100 feet max distance to my shot, how many of those would I be unable to reach before, but now I can reach? Fantastic. Now that you got that list, you have the potential to reach this. But the tricky part about this is that even if you're reaching holes that you've never reached before, if you aren't working on your putting and you're not making those putts within that 20-foot range, congratulations. Having that extra 100 feet of distance did nothing for you in capitalizing on the stroke because you still have to actually close out the hole, which is where we bring upshots into the equation. Let's say that you're working first on your drives and then second on your putting. Well, cool. Now you can make your putts, but you're throwing your drives. With more power comes more responsibility. So now my shanks are actually also going a little bit farther because I have the potential to throw farther because I worked on that distance. So now I'm having to throw these up shots in from different distances, but I haven't actually worked on them. So I'm throwing my upshot and my upshots have no practice, so I'm having to scramble. And when I'm scrambling, I'm making myself have 35-foot putts rather than 20-foot putts. Now, having a 20-foot putt dialed isn't helping me that much because I haven't worked on my upshots, and having the extra distance has actually led me to more problems in terms of it's creating more opportunity for me to get in trouble. You see where we're going with all this? I'm not trying to tell you that you should never work on distance, because as someone who has spent the last 10 months actually working on his distance and trying to improve that aspect of his game, it is a grueling task and something that I have spent a year working on my putt in years past. And now that I have that dialed, man, I am so grateful to have putting be a confidence part of my game. When I'm stepping up to a hole, I'm not terrified at the end of the hole because I know that I've put in the work there. And all of this, you're going to have to put in the work. That's the end of the story. This video is not going to be some magical moment where you're like, oh yeah, I watched Mr. YouTube, man, and now I just have it all figured out. What I want this to be is a roadmap that you can use to utilize the next few months to your advantage, so when we hit the 2024 tournament season, you're ready to go. Especially if you're those players who are like, I've really thought about getting into tournaments, but I just haven't. I'm waiting till next year. I'm waiting till next year. Let's jump into 2024 ready to capitalize and maximize on our potential. So I hope this video was helpful, but I'm gonna be very curious about the comment section of this video, seeing what you guys agree with, especially in terms of the numbers that we're throwing out there for what I think are check marks for what you should be looking at on a consistent basis, especially that cycle of 20 foot, 150 feet off of your range, hitting 75% accuracy from there, and then moving up to the 50 feet of distance, running it back, adding another 5 feet, working with that extra 50 feet of accuracy, and then bringing it into another 50 feet. Feel free to let me know. I want to say thank you as always for watching. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day and you can make it fantastic for someone else too. But for now, we're going to leave you with the birdie.